Despeak here with Despeak Gaming, bringing you a look at Judge Eyes, the new IP from Sega. So this takes place in the Yakuza universe, as it is set in the same area that the Yakuza games are set in. So whether or not this is going to have some kind of connection to Yakuza remains to be seen. But in this game, you are playing a lawyer investigating crimes and murders. I'm assuming for your clients, maybe for the police. I'm not exactly certain, since what articles I could find online about this game have been kind of scarce, or Sega just hasn't said anything about that. So some people do, or I have seen articles of some people saying that this game is like Yakuza meets Phoenix Wright, since you are a lawyer and he does know martial arts. So the gameplay wise, it is very similar to that of Yakuza, which is actually a good thing because the gameplay in Yakuza is really good. And with us recently getting a flood of Yakuza games, since we have gotten, Zero, Kamiwa 2, we are getting the remasters, I guess, of 3, 4, and 5. We do have Yakuza 6 that is out. As well as Shenmue that just came out last month, I do believe. And we will be getting Shenmue 3 sometime. This game is coming out in next year. If for the Western audiences, it will be out in December this year. So it is likely, I would say, that the release date or release month for this game could be April. It could be March or April. But again, I'm not entirely sure. So this demo is completely in Japanese, so I have no clue what they're saying here because I can't read it and I can't speak it, although I am learning. And I don't actually know what some of the prompts and stuff say. I mean, when they give icons for the buttons, and since it does play like Yakuza combat-wise, I can kind of guess what it wants me to do. And yeah, so this time around you have EX actions, which are essentially heat actions from Yakuza. You have two distinct fighting styles. Now, whether or not you do get more as the game progresses, maybe 4 like they do in the Yakuza games, remains to be seen. So I'm assuming that this part of the main gameplay part of the demo has something to do with what is about to be shown. Which is a house on fire, the police arresting the boyfriend after the girlfriend is murdered. Now, I'm assuming that, since you are a lawyer, you're a defense attorney. Then again, you could be a DA. Again, I don't really know, since, I can't, read any of this. But, this game is, story-wise, is a departure for the studio. While, the gameplay remains basically that of Yakuza, the story is going to be something that is what draws people in, which is what we want in a video game. We want a story to be, or not everyone, but the people that do play story-based games, they want these stories to be engrossing, to draw you in, to want that, so you want to play more, that you want to progress. You don't just get to a point and stop because you're like, I'm kind of done with this. Now, with that being said, what's interesting about it is the points in time when you are looking for stuff. Reminds me of the old point and click games. Now, I'm not talking about the hidden object games, but I'm talking about like games that, you're like, oh, well, I have to check this out, I have to check this out. Those elements are pretty simplistic, and apparently disguises like this coming up are a key part of the game, as has been stated that was stated by Sega. So it will be interesting to note how these disguises are going to be implemented into the game. Now, it could be something as simple as, you have these disguises and they, simply help you blend in for a mission and you kind of can't use them again. Or it could be something that, you do get, and you do get to keep. Some games do allow that, some games do not. But this game, like I said, story-wise, with it departing from what the studio is known for, actually got me to thinking about other games that the studio just don't want to depart from, whether it be through the campaign or multiplayer. And games that don't depart from the multiplayer are, games that come out every year. So essentially, Call of Duty, Battlefront, Battlefield, and sports-based games. And while sports-based games tend not to change, with the exception of every couple of years they might get newly added features, maybe get a revamp on a certain part of the controls. It is unclear why other than the point of money, of them wanting more money, I can't see why sports games aren't released every couple of years with, so that way the studio can, just release like a year and a half worth of DLC, new characters, modes, or whatever, and then follow that in by, releasing the next game a couple years later with new gameplay improvements, graphical improvements, as well as the updated roster. I mean, essentially that's what a sports game is. You look at Madden 17 versus Madden 18, it's essentially the same game with a few added characters, and that's it. When we look at game studios like Bethesda, NetherRealm Studios, or even most Namco Bandai games, i.e. Dragon Ball, Gundam, Bleach, Jump Force that's coming out. When we look at a lot of these studios, is they take time in between their games. So Fallout 4 was released in 2015 or 16. I forget now, but the next Fallout game, comes out later this year. But it is essentially something that you can. I have the idea that was kind of toyed around with for Fallout 4, an online multiplayer feature, and this will be actually a departure for Bethesda. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, Elder Scrolls Online was, since it was, an MMO. But it did follow the same basic formula that other Elder Scrolls games did. While in Fallout 76, it is going to be completely online. So while this game maybe didn't have the production cycle, so it's not going to be as great as past Bethesda games, it is going to be an interesting departure from what they have done. So getting back to what I was saying about games that, don't have long development cycles, i.e. Call of Duty and sports games, you can't implement the changes that you want to implement, unlike if you are playing a game, or unlike a game like Skyrim. So if you look at when Oblivion was released compared to Skyrim, there was at least a 6 to 8 year gap. I do believe. I don't recall exactly when Oblivion was released, as it was released before Fallout 3, so maybe 2006, 2007. And again, I could be wrong in that. So, and then Skyrim was released, like I said, 6 to 8 years later, so 2012 to 13, or 14 being the latest. But again, I think it was around 2006. But I think it was around 2012 that Skyrim was released. Now, now if you look at the improvements over Skyrim compared to Oblivion, you can see them. Not just graphical improvements. There are minor improvements overall. So, with that being said, these gaming companies like 2K and EA and Activision, I think they could actually take a page from these books and not release a game not release Madden and the 2K games, or even Call of Duty every year. I think if they were to take a step back and let Call of Duty kind of simmer down for a while, for like a couple years, much like Ubisoft did with Assassin's Creed, I think overall it would be a welcome change of pace for those game studios. Yes, and for those of you just watching for the getting back to this game right quick, you do have a stealth mechanic too, so you have to follow this guy. And I'm assuming if he sees you and runs off, you have to restart it. Not exactly sure, because I didn't get caught. But, going back to what I was saying, I think it is a welcome change for video game companies to let a game die down for a couple years before releasing another one. We look at going back to Bethesda with Doom and Doom Eternal. Doom came out in 2015 to 16, the new Doom, and we are now, I believe, next year, or maybe it was just announced, I don't really recall, but we are getting Doom Eternal. So they took time to allow, Doom to still be for Doom to be accessible to people. People play the game, people like the game, and give them time to digest the story, instead of just, oh yeah, next year we're gonna hit them with this game. And I think that's important because it can allow two things to happen. It can allow the audience to gain a broader appreciation as well as, bring in new people. But on the flip side of that, it does allow people to who hear about the game at like E3 to then go out and like buy the game. It's not a game like Call of Duty to where it's like a new Call of Duty game is gonna come out every year and there's not gonna be any significant changes to it. It's gonna be the same game. It's gonna be the same game, just with a different studio title on it. With the exception of this one, since it does have a battle royale feature, which all battle royale is basically free for all, just with multiple 20, 30, or depending on what game you are playing, upwards of 100 players, which isn't a bad idea, but unfortunately it is not that great either. Because when you are doing something like this, or something like a battle royale game, and you're charging $60 for it, unfortunately you do have other battle royale games that are free that may or may not be better. But I think if Activision was to let Call of Duty die down, I'm talking about completely die down, wait 2 to 3 years to release the new Call of Duty game, I believe that it would be a refresher for fans, but moreover than that, it would be a refresher for the series in general. Now, unlike sports games that I think actually benefit from a new game coming out every 2 to 3 years, because you can do these free updates like certain MMOs do, but you can do these free updates that release new attire and new superstars, or even make it to where the attires are free, but you have to buy the superstars. I think a lot of people would be more willing to do that as opposed to just waiting or just buying. Be like, oh well, I'm gonna buy 2K19, the WWE 2K19, or any other of the 2K sports games, or Madden, or FIFA, or hockey games if those are still being made, or baseball games. Regardless, I think that it would grant people a better appreciation and having more longevity with some of these games. But I mean, if you look at what Ubisoft did with Assassin's Creed, that is actually a good thing. They took 2 to 3 years off after the last one, not Origins, but after the one before that did abysmal. It was glitchy, was a game that a lot of people didn't enjoy. And there were some people that didn't buy it because they're just like, well, I'm just kind of done. So, with all of that being said, it does pose an interesting question. Is in that do we as gamers want studios just to bank out games that are the same content over and over and over and over again, or do we want them to bring out new IPs? I mean, when we look at Marvel's Spider-Man, this was a fresh take on Spider-Man. And it's something that is a pleasant surprise to a lot of people. And, obviously there's gonna be a sequel. Because it's done so well. It's on track to sell better than God of War, the newest God of War game. So, we can assume that after the first 3 DLC packs, there's going to be more. But, my point is, this was the first Spider-Man game made since, I believe, Shattered Dimensions. Or maybe that one's where you were playing as like the future and past Peter Parker. I don't know. But like I said, it was one of them 2 games. And we see that, it is doing well. We see that the new God of War game was the same way. It started off, by the amount of units that it did indeed sell. Now, when we look at a game, like a formulaic game, that is the same thing year after year after year, you'll find people to buy it, but there's no real change. From game to game to game. And, essentially the people buy it just because their friends are buying it. And their friends like Call of Duty, for example, and they basically just buy it because their friends buy it and they can play with their friends and blah blah blah, and that's why the game does supposedly good. And there's always people complaining about these games. Oh, well, the new Call of Duty sucks, but it's just because it's the same thing year after year after year. But it's like, well, if that's the case, why do you keep buying it? I had friends that played Call of Duty all the time, and the last Call of Duty game I bought was Call of Duty 3, or Black Ops 2 rather. I didn't buy Ghost or Advanced Warfare or the remake of Modern Warfare, or none of that, because I don't care about these games. Well, let me phrase it. It's not that I don't care about these games. It's just that, essentially after Black Ops 2, while some of my friends did buy said game, buy the next Call of Duty game or whatever, they were still constantly complaining about it. And I got to a point, I'm like, I'm not gonna buy a game that my friends play just to play with them. And that's what I've stuck to. Now, and it is what it is. And what it is, these studios think that they can just keep churning out these games, and these games are not getting any better. Sports games or Call of Duty and all that. They think they can just churn these games out and they're gonna sell. People are always gonna buy them, which is true. People will always buy Call of Duty because it is Call of Duty. But I think if they were to allow a studio to completely revamp the series, add an interesting campaign, add different stuff to the multiplayer aspects to it, I believe overall it would be a better game. Yes, and this gets into a QTE section, which is always nice. But when you just turn out games after games after games for money, and that's all you want, you don't care about what game is being, or what the game does or anything else. it gets to a point to where you can see that these games are just being churned out. They're exactly the same, year after year after year. And they keep doing it because they sell well enough to warrant, oh, well, we're going to do this. Well, here's the problem. Like, what's eventually going to happen to a company like Activision and the Call of Duty franchise if they keep churning out this crap? And, their numbers start to dwindle. They'll see, oh, crap, we've got to reinvest and redo these games and the like. And that's really the only way that these studios are going to get a wake-up call. And then, when we have game studios like Insomniac or Santa Monica Studios that did, God of, or even Guerrilla Games that did God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and the new Spider-Man game. These were games that they hadn't done anything like before. While when we look at Naughty Dog, for example, they used to do Crash Bandicoot, and then they did Jak and Daxter. Well, here's the thing. When we look at Uncharted, it's a departure from all of the games that Naughty Dog was known for. And what that does is it allows a game studio the freedom to be ambitious with other titles. So I mean, think about it like this: if Uncharted hadn't done that well, do you think we would have gotten The Last of Us? No. But Sony was willing to take a chance on them for something new, something different. And that's something that, game companies like EA have not learned. I would say that if they were to give the Star Wars IP to a company that legitimately, not even a company, but to a studio that wanted to make a good, compelling Star Wars game, I believe it would actually be better than just a generic Battlefront game. But only time will tell if these studios will ever learn. And, as it goes for EA saying that, hey, single player games are a dying breed, multiplayer is where it's at. Obviously, games like God of War and Spider-Man and this game and, Horizon Zero Dawn and, The Last of Us 2 are proving that statement wrong. I mean, while people do enjoy multiplayer games, I mean, obviously, it is to a point to where they're not that they're not pulling in and raking in like these companies would like. And we can see that. We can see that games like Battlefront has been disappointing to a lot of different fans. And, hey, maybe EA will finally learn and actually take the time to do different games. But this is coming up to the end of the demo, so we will check you guys later. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you are new and you do enjoy this content and you do want to see more. So until next time, Dead Speak out.